Welcome to an episode of Fresh Perspectives. I'm Marcus and Pierre, a manager here at the Strategy Group. I'm joined by Pierre Shop, director here. Thanks, Pierre, for joining today's episode.
Thanks, Marcus.
So today we'll be talking about employee value propositions, or EVPs. We've done a lot of work in that space with different types of clients, in particular in local government.
Yep.
So we're going to just talk a bit about why it's important, what an EVP is, some challenges with setting up one, what are some of the barriers, but then also what are the benefits of having an EVP as well. And we know that from the work that we've done, it's very important, I think, having an EVP for an organisation. It can be quite challenging for people to attract the right talent. So having a really strong EVP in place can help address those issues to attracting the right people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and maybe before we get into all the detail of EVP, do you want to maybe give a bit of a definition as to what you think an EVP is?
Yeah, sure. First, I can tell you what an EVP is not. So it is not, and we see that often with clients, it's not a laundry list of all your perks and benefits. This is not this. Nobody reads this. Nobody cares sometimes. An EVP, and it comes from the world of the startup, of the customer value proposition, is a high-level statement. It's a promise made by a company to employee and future employee. It's all the tangible and intangible benefits that you put in front of your employees to make sure you get their involvement, their excitement, and their willingness to work for you. Basically, this is what an EVP is. And the way we've done this with the strategy group, we've done, as you mentioned, a lot of engagement with local council, government organization, private organization, and we've been able to develop our own framework around employee value proposition. And in essence, this framework it's an analytical tool to allow companies to identify what their EVP is, but also how they can strengthen their EVP through tangible actions. And this framework is structured on 6 components, and I have them listed so I don't forget all of them. The first one is, of course, career development.
Yeah.
So people would join the organization if they have a sense that they can grow, they can learn horizontally up in the hierarchy. So that's number 1. Engagement with work is number 2, which is like the work in itself, how aligned and how valuable it is for them to do this work, the meaning and the purpose of the work. And also, do they have the right tools and system in place to be able to do a good job? The third one is around support for well-being, which is very, very important and more important, especially with younger generation. It's flexibility at work, work-life balance, ability to work from home, hybrid work, remote work, etc. Rewards and benefits, obviously, so it's looking after remuneration, salary, bonuses, but also all the types of perks, gym membership, discounts for theater or cinema tickets, etc., etc. Sense of belonging, this is where we go to the more intangible aspect of an EVP. So it's the ability to create a sense of like ownership with the work, but also like the sense that you are part of the team, you're welcome, and you feel like you belong with the people you're working with. It's very much at team level. It's team culture. And the last one is pride in affiliation and reputation, which is how much do you relate to the company vision, the value, the mission of the company, and also the leadership style. You look up to the leader of an organization, say, I trust them and I want to work for these people, for this organization. So overall, if you look at, we also investigated different frameworks and all the different elements of value that can be put by employers in front of employees are usually fall into one of those 6 categories.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a great framework to have because it can be slightly adapted as well depending on the organization. So they might have certain ways of different use of language, so you can tweak it slightly. But I think all those elements encapsulate what it means to work for an organization. And it's really important as a tool as well to then assess how important those factors are to different individuals who work for the organization, but then also how satisfied they are with what they're getting out of the organization. I think that's where the framework really comes in value when you assess what the gap is between those 2 different elements.
That's true. What we do in our methodology and how we approach EVP, as you mentioned, we do different kind of like survey, we crowdsource information, we do, of course, focus groups and interview and across all the different departments, a different level of seniority, etc., length of tenure. And what we look at is across all those 6 elements I mentioned, as you mentioned, what's most important,
Yeah.
where they satisfy, and we measure the delta. And usually for elements that score highly in terms of like importance and where satisfaction is high, they are key elements for your EVP.
Yeah.
They are your pillars that will have to structure your EVP. And they might mean different things to different group of employees, but then they are the things that have to be reflected in your overarching EVP. Then the elements where that score like highly in terms of like importance for employee, but like low satisfaction, this is where like, as an organization, you have to do something.
Yeah.
You have to do something about it. You have to define, how do I bridge the gap? Where's the opportunity to bridge that gap? And this is where the strategy piece comes to fruition. You really need to sit down with leadership, like learning and development people, organizational development, to identify how do we bridge that gap, which is, what we say often is like EVP, yes, there's an element of branding and communication, but that's only 50% of it.
Yeah.
The remaining 50% are really around execution, strategy, implementation, and planning. And I feel like the worst would be promising something. We always say like the worst would be you promise something that's reflected in your EVP, great,
Exactly.
but then it doesn't translate into your experience as an employee, and then that creates even your satisfaction is aligned with the expectation that you have in terms of what's going to be your experience working for a company, etc. So if the gap is too high, people will be very disillusioned and potentially will leave. So you don't want that.
Absolutely. And I think like you talked about when we do focus groups for interviews, and I think that's like so crucial to have that in this whole piece of work if you're going to do an EVP and look and establishing what that means for your organization, because it's about the people, and you can't just come up with like a statement and say, oh yeah, this is what we think means to work for our organizations, we think is going to attract people. And I think we've learned a lot. We've been in a lot of focus groups. You learn a lot, and especially getting a range of different people. And if you think of like, say, a local council, for example, so diverse people work there. You've literally got people who work in like corporate services, so they have like desk jobs, through to people who are on the road. They're basically, they're fixing up potholes in the road, or you've got people in childcare, or people working in swimming pools. So diverse. And if you think of like the different elements, like support for well-being, career development, engagement with work, all those different elements, they mean something completely different to those different people.
Yeah, completely.
Yet they work for the same organization. So you need to really work out, okay, what are maybe the common elements between these people, but then what's different? And then you may have to offer different things and have different initiatives for those different types of people.
That is true. And I think this is a question that we had on certain engagements, like, do we have one EVP?
Yeah.
Or do we have multiple EVPs?
Yeah.
Because as part of our work, we identify different groups of employees, we do segmentation of employees, the same way you would do customer segmentation.
Yeah.
And you're right, especially in your council, the roles and the background are so diverse.
Yeah.
So we do this segmentation, and we see the different needs and expectations across the 6 elements. Usually we try to push for having a unifying EVP that is this broad statement at organization level, but then we understand that you might need to create variation of it, or then how this EVP would be standard across the organization, but then the translation to different strategic initiative will match the differences of the different groups, and the initiative will be slightly different. So I think, and of course, we found that was a good way to maintain the cohesion of the company while catering for the different needs and expectation. It depends on some organization will want different EVPs, some organization will push for one EVP. I think, it depends on the culture of the organization, but we found that this approach was actually pretty good, worked pretty well. I think beyond the ones that we mentioned, say like, yes, there's a branding exercise, but it's also a piece of transformation and strategy. I think something important is like not neglecting the face-to-face time you have during the research, and especially the co-design aspect.
Yeah.
I know it's time consuming, but especially when you think about what are the opportunity to bridge that delta between what's important for employees and where they are not very satisfied. If you crowdsource, when we've done this through survey, etc., online, forms, etc., sometimes people don't really understand the assignment, and they put some kind of a very generic ideas that don't really match. Whereas like if you co-design with them, you have time to explain what you're trying to achieve, and people can talk to each other and create better opportunities for actually that actually going to help reduce this delta. So I think that would be for companies who say, no, we want to go fast and we want to go at scale. I say, great.
Yeah.
But don't neglect that you also want high quality insights.
Absolutely.
And that will only come from co-design workshops.
Yeah, I think it's that
interviews.
It's almost that education piece of like, if you're wanting to get the voice of your staff, you need to actually educate them exactly on what you're trying to achieve and what an EVP should address. Because some people might think, oh, it's just like the vision or it's just the values, but it's not. Like there's obviously a link between the vision and values to what an EVP is, but that's not what it just is. So I think that's really important, having that awareness. And you're right, co-design workshops, focus groups, one-on-one interviews, I think all those different methods are really crucial to then just getting in front of people and explaining to them what you're trying to achieve. So they know, so when you come up with solutions with them, they can actually come up with something which is going to be meaningful and add value to the EVP.
Yeah. I think it's another challenge, like to break some kind of misconception we have around sometimes when we work in local government around employees in local government. I assume in state government, people say, the importance is going to be just for support for well-being, work-life balance, blah, blah, blah. And actually, this is not true. I mean, this is not always true. This is such a broad statement. There's so many people we interview and work with. Actually, they want career development. They want progress. They want to learn. They want to grow, but still value the nurturing environment of a local council. So I feel like it's about how do you reach this tricky balance. So I feel like it's having also like putting aside your prejudice or your misconception and just coming with like, open mind and just be ready to listen, look at the data and really be evidence-based, looking at, like the cold data to be able to segment, analyze what's actually important for people and how do you respond.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's also like a difference between like private sector organizations and public sector. Because private sector, you might think you get different types of perks. Like you mentioned, public sector, people think, it's, it's more well-being, you get, roster days off maybe, or you work from home. Whereas private sector, maybe you get additional perks, maybe they have partnerships, or you get like a free gym membership or whatever it may be, those different perks. Or you get to, work from anywhere. They're perks people value, but it's trying to understand, okay, what can you like offer and how can you compete as well with those differing organizations? Because you could be like in the public sector, a local council, you might want to attract people from the private sector, but maybe you can't compete with some of their perks, but you can offer other things such as giving back to the community, having that impact, working on really diverse projects. So I think it's just understanding, what's the balance there, and also comparing to see what else is out there and how can we compete with them, but then also showcase what's unique about us as an organization.
No, I agree. And definitely when we looked at the scoring of when we did like survey and we did engagement at scale and look at all the 6 component engagement with the work, which reflects like what's the meaning of the work, the purpose of working and the support for well-being, which is the flexibility, work-life balance. Those 2 components tend to rank higher compared to private organizations. So that's a fact. But then you're right. If you go to the next level down, you look at different segments, it can vary so much. So you need to look at, the big picture, but then you need to be able to look at the variation based on different, profile, persona, employee segments.
Yeah, I think a great example is Penrith City Council. So we're working that together. That was a really interesting project to work on. Penrith is one of the biggest councils in New South Wales. They're based in Western Sydney. They've got the airport coming there soon. So, new challenges, new opportunities there. And I think from that project, they were really bought into it, Penrith, which is crucial. Like they really wanted to make a difference. They really wanted to make sure they nailed this EVP. So got it right. So it was quite comprehensive, the research that we did. I know we did a survey for across the council, which a lot of people responded to, did a number of focus groups, we did interviews with different executives and senior leaders at the organisation. And I think that really helped to get that whole perspective of the different types of people and what they think about it is working at council and what's important to them and what they really value. Penrith Council and councils in general as well, you have a lot of people who they move to the council, they stay there for a long time, 20 years, 25 years. So you've got those people with that perspective, and then you also have new employees when they just join, maybe from different industries, the private sector. And so I think by getting that broad scale of responses from people, we could then say, okay, well, means to the people, moving into the council versus what's valuable to the people who've been there for a long time and understanding what the, opportunities there are there.
We had that EVP like statement, but then we spent quite a bit of time analyzing those different deltas for the different groups and coming up with a specific roadmap for them with like quick win for the short term things can quickly be implemented to improve like the satisfaction of different employee segments, and then more like long-term initiatives like like something that will take a bit longer to put in place. But I think that the important thing is like collecting information from employee staff across all department, lengths of tenure, etc. And then working with either the senior leader, but also like the L&D or organizational development team to actually craft this roadmap, understand how we bridge the gap, because they have the knowledge, they know what's important. Sometimes we realize during the research, there is employee would say, that we don't have this kind of perks. And we talk to the OG team and they're like, we do have this. So we realize actually sometimes the problem is not that there isn't the perk, the benefits, or the initiative to match the need. It's just there is just a lack of awareness. So sometimes the initiative is as simple as like better communication to raise the awareness that actually, if those kind of perks like can be like gym membership or like is accessible to them. So it's just it can be quite, and these are quick wins. It's just to and people will be very satisfied to know that actually, well, if they want this, it's actually available within council.
Yeah, I think it's the communication of the different opportunities that exist at council is crucial.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think as well, like with the work we did with Penrith, I think we also did like a good comparison of the market and seeing what's out there and comparing. So we looked at what other councils offer in comparison, and more from like the perspective of a new employee or someone looking for a job. So because we're not going to go and talk to all the different organizations, not going to give us all their data and information, but I think doing that desktop research at CK from the perspective of a potential employee or potential new joiner, what do they see online? Like what's available, what's the information available to them? I think that was really important to see, okay, well, this is what Penrith is doing, but this is what, say, another council is doing. This is, say, what the state government's doing. This is what another private sector organisation is doing. So I think that was valuable to then see, okay, well, to get a gauge and see, okay, where does maybe Penrith sit in the market right now, and what do they want to do? So to get to be the best employer of choice for people wanting to move into that type of work.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think getting those different perceptions is really important, and that also then helps when you craft that EVP statement. And we spent a lot of time with Penrith really making sure we got it right. And nailing it. I remember we kind of looked at all the data, all the research, worked with the learning and development team and worked out, okay, well, what is going to really make a difference to the different people at Penrith and potential employees? And spend time crafting that. And then once it was crafted as well, it's not like, cool, we've got the statement, we go with it. We still got to get the input. So it's that whole co-design process. You iterate as well, so you get feedback from other staff, you almost test it. But then, like I think Penrith, when they went to the whole brand and marketing perspective of building out the EVP, they're testing that as well with a broader group of people to see, does it actually resonate? And you kind of just make tweaks on it and just play around with the whole overall messaging around what the brand is, because I think that's really important. You're not going to know if you get it right until you actually get it out there, but by doing that whole co-design process, you can really start to, I guess, be a bit more confident that what you're putting out there actually resonates with people and is meaningful. Yeah,
no, that's true. And also something that is something to be careful of, like co-design doesn't mean synthesizing everyone's opinion to make everyone happy. No. It will also, and that's something Penrith did really well, they really defended the EVP statement, but they tested it, and you're right, they refined a bit, but actually they remained true to the initial research, and actually the engagement they received and the early testing results are very positive and encouraging. So I feel like it's important also to remain true to the data, to the insight you got from your research phase. Otherwise, if you start, people will always have different opinions, will always have, because we're talking about words, people will have always different perspective, it's very subjective. So I feel like if you start tweaking everything, you would end up with like a sentence that's a bit meaningless or very standard. I think you want something that is differentiated, that is unique. And if you include everyone's like feedback,
Yeah.
you end up with something that is a bit bland and
Yeah.
a bit like, doesn't.
You don't want something generic. You don't want
something
it's like,
generic.
oh, that's just that's any organization.
Yeah.
You want it to be unique to them, and I think that's the most, and that's I think what people gravitate towards as well. They're like, oh, cool, like that actually resonates with me as a person. Like I want to work for that organization, and then you can see what they offer as well. Like it's a statement plus everything they offer.
Exactly.
Which then all feeds up into the statement. So I think that's really, really important to have that. Yeah, very clear, concise, but unique statement for an organization.
I agree. Any final thoughts on EVP?
I think, we've covered a lot of it. I think there's also, and this could be maybe another episode, but the link between EX, employee experience, and the customer experience as well.
Yeah.
Because I think by having a really strong EVP, that then has a knock-on effect for the customer experience. Because you have happy employees, well, they're going to be more motivated to provide a better experience for the customers. So I think that could be another conversation for us, but there's definitely a strong link between employee experience and customer experience.
I agree.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks, Pierre. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Tune in to another episode of Fresh Perspective soon. Thank you.